Yes.
So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. The idea here is to talk a bit more about Golden Heat, one of the funds managed by Heat Capital. I will give you some information about it, but of course, as I mentioned before, I strongly recommend you to schedule a one-on-one conversation so we can discuss in details about the fund and of course any other thing that we have been doing for our customers. So the agenda today, I'm gonna talk a bit about Portugal. So of course I know that probably all of you know about the country, but I want to highlight some interesting information about the country. I will talk a bit about the managing entity, that is Heat Capital, the fund, the Golden Visa program, small comments and a few information, and then we have the final considerations and the Q&A. So we are going to be open to answer any questions that you may have during my presentation. So why Portugal? I believe that you already know about the country, but as I said, I think it's important to highlight that the country has several benefits and have been outstanding from other countries in the world. And I think one of the main reasons that people are moving to Portugal is because the country is very safe, especially when compared to underdeveloped countries. For Brazil, for example, we are seeing a lot of Brazilians coming to Portugal, as I mentioned. The other thing is that it's part of the European community. So you have a market that you can explore with more than 200 million people, which is very interesting. And compared to the other countries of the European community, the opportunity costs are lower when we are talking about like other countries such as France, Germany, and so on. So I think that this is very important to highlight. Talking about the living costs here, one that it's really interesting to highlight is the comparison between Portugal and the US. So here is around like 42% cheaper than in the US. Of course, in average, it's not, I'm not considering like Lisbon with New York, for example, that probably the difference is higher, but this is something that is very important, and that's the reason that the country is attracting a lot of Americans. And another thing, when we look at the startup environment, we are seeing a lot of movement from the government. So that's why we have the Web Summit for a few years now, and we will continue seeing this fair here in Portugal, in Lisbon specifically. And also, there are several incentive programs from the government that are attracting a lot of companies to start their business in Portugal. And this is something very important as well that I like to highlight. In terms of tourism, we know that Portugal relies in travel and tourism. It's equivalent to 8% of the GDP in 2020. So this is a very interesting information, because it's a country that has been receiving in average 28 million tourists. So if someone is willing to invest in Portugal, especially in this area, I think that it could be also very attractive. In fact, we have some projects, real estate projects that are related to tourism, and I will tell you a bit more about it, but it's something that we don't develop, but we help banks to develop this type of assets as well, okay? So basically, these are some information about Portugal. Of course, there are many more, but this is something that we can see that is attracting a lot of people to the country. In terms of the real estate market, I would like to highlight the price per square meter of Lisbon and Porto compared to other cities in the European zone. And as you can see here, Lisbon and Porto are below the average of the continent. So we still see a lot of opportunities in this sector. We know that it has changed over the past few years, but we believe that we still have space, we still have opportunities, and we are seeing that from the strong demand especially from international customers. Finally, let's talk about HID Capital so you can understand a bit more about us. HID is an asset manager that was established in 2003. So we have almost like 20 years of experience in the Portuguese market. And we were formerly known as Dunas Capital. But if you go to CMVM's website, which is in this image here, you can click and you can access, and I will share this presentation later on with you. But if you go there, you're going to see that we just recently changed our names from Dunas Capital to HID Capital, because the company was primarily focused on institutional clients. And nowadays we have been dealing with individual investors, and that's why we decided to change our names to HID Capital, because HID means like take care of, and this is something that we are doing with the individuals, families, and of course institutional investors that we have since the beginning. Nowadays we manage several funds and in different classes. So we have mutual funds, we also have alternative funds. We are divided in 4 mutual funds and 4 alternative funds. The mutual funds, 3 of them are based here in Portugal, and it's a white labeling for a bank called Eurobic. So the bank doesn't have a license to manage funds, so they hired us as an external asset manager, so we could deploy different investment strategies so they can distribute in their network. So these are the 3 funds that we manage here in Portugal. And we have another fund based in Luxembourg that we offer not only to Portuguese people, but also to investors worldwide, especially from Spain and Switzerland and Luxembourg. These funds, just to let you know, they invest in financial instruments, so bonds, equities, ETFs, this kind of financial instruments. So that's why we call mutual funds. And then on the other side, we have the alternative funds. And this area started in 2015 when we launched the Viga fund. And I will talk a bit more about this fund later on. But basically, it started in 2015. And then in 2020 and 2021, we launched the other 3 funds that we have that are Golden Bridge, Aston Gold, and Iberian Student Living. These 3 funds that were recently launched, they are also eligible for the Golden Visa program, and we target this type of customers for them. Just one of them is open, just the Iberian Student Living for new subscriptions. But then I will talk a bit more about it later on as well. And finally, we also manage portfolios for individuals and institutional clients, and we do that through bank accounts in Portugal, in Switzerland, and in Luxembourg, depending on the size of the portfolio. So we can provide different financial services to our customers. And this year, we expect to launch and reactivate our license to manage real estate funds directly. That is different than a venture capital fund. And so soon, we will also be able to offer to our customers a specific investment vehicle that brings a lot of benefits to the investors as well. Talking about the alternative funds that are just a preview before we start talking about the Golden HID, because they are all in the same asset class. So basically, the Aston Gold is a fund that was intended for Golden Visa investors. It is focused on income generating assets that are commercial assets invested by an SPV. And basically we purchased retail parks, we purchased supermarkets, fast food stores, and these tenants, they pay us an income. And a small portion of the portfolio is allocated in residential assets to be refurbished. That is around 30% of the total assets of the fund. As I mentioned, this fund is not open for new subscription. We have raised a bit more than 30 million euros for this fund, and we already allocated part of the money raised from the investors. The other fund that we have also active and closed, unfortunately closed for new subscriptions, is the Golden Bridge. This fund was launched in November 2020 and is basically focused on residential assets to be refurbished in premium locations of Lisbon. Nowadays, we have 4 different buildings in our portfolio. The most advanced one is this one that I'm sharing with you. It's a 20-unit building located at Rua da Glória that is very close to the largest avenue in Lisbon called Avenida da Liberdade. And basically, at the moment, we are we already started the construction works, and we are already started the sales of the 20 units. And basically, we expect to finish the refurbishment in 12 months, 18 months from now. So this is the status of one of the buildings that we are managing for this for the Golden Bridge. Then we have the Iberian Student Living. This is a fund that is open for new subscriptions. And basically what we do here is we focus on the purpose-built student accommodation segment. So basically we identify a land, we develop the asset, and then we will explore the operations of the student accommodation. This fund is a partnership between Head Capital and IP Investment Management, a Hong Kong-based asset manager, and they also have operations in Singapore. So basically, they have done this strategy in the British market. They are also entering into the Spanish market, and to enter in the Portuguese market, we developed this fund together, and now we are managing, we are co-managing this fund. Basically, we also already invested part of the portfolio that we raised already, and this is an asset located in Porto, near the universities, because this is one of the investment criteria that we have for this fund. Okay, so these are the 3 funds that
Gustavo, we have already received one question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's interesting because it's a relevant question. So there is a question regarding the minimum investment amount. Yes. I assume the person is talking about the funds that are currently active.
Okay, so for the Iberian Student Living that is open, the minimum investment is 150,000 euros. Yes. And then, of course, you can do incrementals of 1,000, but 150 is the minimum. If you are pursuing the Golden Visa application, then the minimum required by the SAF is 500K. So it's slightly higher. So this fund, despite we have focused a lot on Golden Visa investors, it's also interesting to someone willing to diversify their own portfolio. So with 150K, it is possible to do that. I will talk further about the Golden Heat, but the Golden Heat has a lower minimum amount that is 50K. So maybe it's more attractive to investors not willing to invest more than 100K in this specific fund. Okay. In terms of the Viga, this was our first alternative fund, as I mentioned, and it was created to restructure the non-performing loans of financial institutions in Portugal. So basically, the participants, the investors of this fund are banks. So what we do for them is we license the lands, the project, we license the lands that we received from these non-performing loans, and then we sell the project already approved by the City Hall to groups of investors willing to develop the project. The banks, our participants, they don't have the interest to develop it. So that's why we sell to the market when we have all the approvals from the City Hall. I'm not sure if there's any other question. Okay.
No, not for the moment.
Perfect. So basically, these are the alternative funds that we have available today. Of course, this is just a nutshell. If you want to know more, please send me a message and we can discuss further about it. Here is our team. So I am one of the directors at Head Capital. Joaquim Luis Gomes is our CEO. He has more than 30 years of experience in the financial market. He started in the British market. He worked there for several years. And when he returned to Portugal, he launched a brokerage firm called Midas Investimentos that was later sold to BBVA, a Spanish bank. And he has been like the major shareholder in Untitled Capital since the beginning. And Nuno Pinto is our CFO. He worked for Midas as well, but he also has experience in consultancy that he has done in the past. Okay. Finally, about the fund itself, the Golden Head Fund. Here are the main features about it. So basically, what we have done here is a fund that is also eligible for the Golden Visa. So it require like all the requirements to consider it eligible is matched here with this fund. And basically, the idea here is to invest in income generating assets and assets to be developed. And I will talk a bit more about it later on. But here we are talking about assets to be developed on a green field, not something as we were focusing on with the Aston Gold or the Golden Bridge that we were considering projects already approved by the City Hall. So basically, in terms of the features here, as I mentioned, the minimum investment is 50,000. So it's also interesting to someone willing to diversify and understand a bit more about the Portuguese market before, let's say, doing a larger investment in the country. This fund is considered as a closed-end fund. So the investors are not allowed to redeem before the fund's maturity, which is in 8 years from the first investment. This fund is not launched yet. We expect to launch it next month with a minimum amount of 2 million euros. And then, of course, we will continue fundraising until at least the end of September 2022. So we will have, let's say, 6 more months after the end of March to continue fundraising. And if necessary, we may extend or increase the capital of the fund to continue fundraising after this date. Okay. In terms of distribution of dividends, we are not going to do it during the lifetime of the fund. So the fund is intended for accumulation. But of course, if we have any liquidity event during the lifetime of the fund and we were not able to reinvest the cash, we may propose a distribution to our investors so we can advance part of the returns to our investors so they don't need to wait 8 years until the end of the fund. Okay. In terms of the fees, we have fixed and variable commissions. So the most important fixed commissions are the administration fee, that is 2% per year. This is a commission, of course, as any other fund paid by the fund, not on top of the investment, and is considered when we discuss about the target return. We are already considering this fee, and the subscription fee is 3%. It's a one-off fee paid by the fund as well, so it's deducted from the investment and not on top of the investment. So let's say that an investor is willing to invest 100K. This investor will put 100K into the fund's bank account, and then the 3% will be a commission held by the fund, not directly supported by the investor. Okay. Again, this is another fixed commission. We have this type of commission just to cover the expenses that we have to set up the fund and of marketing the fund and so on. And finally, the variable commission is the performance fee of 20% of what exceeds 6% per year. This 6% is net of fees. So basically, it's already considering the fixed fees of the fund, so all the cost structure of the fund. And basically, At the end of the fund, we expect to achieve the 6% return from our investments. And then at the end, if we achieved a return higher than 6%, on the difference between the achieved return and the 6%, we are going to charge our performance fee, and the 6%, initial 6% will be paid to the investors. Okay. Finally, we also we will also take leverage to develop the projects and to acquire some of the assets held by the companies. And this leverage can be up to 70% of the fund's total assets. This is just a way to increase the potential returns of the investments, because as we know, the finance cost here in Portugal, at least, is very interesting, and it's lower than the percentage that we are expecting to deliver to our investors. Okay. And then finally, as I mentioned, as a bonus, this fund meets all the requirements to be considered as eligible for the Golden Visa. So if someone is willing to invest 500,000, this person can apply for the program. That is something different than the investment. It's something that must be held by a law firm or a professional. This is just a way to obtain the residence authorization. It's not a way to get it directly. This is very important to highlight here as well. Okay. But again, if someone has the interest to know more about it, we have several firms that have been working with us that we are happy to introduce. So you can also have a conversation with an expert about this subject. In terms of the fund itself, about the investment strategy, in order to meet the Golden Visa requirement, it requests that we invest at least 6% of the total assets of the fund in Portuguese companies. So we are going to do that. And in fact, our idea is to invest 100% of the total assets of the fund. And as I mentioned, we are going to focus on two different asset classes. The first one is income generating assets from a commercial perspective. We are not looking at income from residential assets. Okay. And then the other asset class will be real estate development through the SPV owner of the assets. And here we are talking about not only commercial assets, but also residential assets throughout Portugal. Looking into the details of each one of the asset classes, for the income generating assets, we are talking about up to 50% of the fund's assets. Okay. And the idea is to purchase supermarkets, fast food restaurants, logistics, retail parks, and this type of assets, so we can have a diversification in terms of the tenants, in terms of the sectors, and we are going to also focus on long-term contracts, ideally with low-risk tenants, so we can predict and not see many trouble during the period that we are going to hold the asset. For this asset class, we are targeting a yield of between 6 and 7% per annum. That's why we are going to focus on up to 50% of the fund's assets, because allocating the capital on this asset class we will try to give to our investors a certain level of comfort with investments, but then we expect to make money and generate higher returns with the developments that we are going to do over the time. Okay. For this asset class, just like the other, we are gonna not only focus on major cities, but also in other cities throughout Portugal that we believe that could be attractive in terms of returns. Finally, for the assets to be developed, as I mentioned, we are going to focus on residential and commercial assets, and it can be projects that are already approved by the City Hall. So in this case, we can avoid like 1 or 2 years of obtaining the licenses, but we are also considering properties that we have to license the project. And we are also considering this type of building of opportunities, because we are seeing that the market is changing a bit here in Portugal. So we are seeing that less projects are already approved by the City Hall on a interesting or attractive price. So that's why we prefer to do this next step of purchasing assets to be licensed. So we understand that it's going to be a longer investment cycle, but we understand as well that we can find attractive opportunities in order to achieve the target return of 12 to 15% per year that we are expecting. So that's why for this fund, compared to the others, we decided to go to this type of assets as well. Okay. And it's important to mention that despite we have the expertise of the market, we will have external project managers in each project that we are going to develop, because we understand that we need someone looking and talking with the engineers, with the constructors. So we need someone to be involved. And of course, these external project managers will be hired by the invested companies of the fund. So these invested companies can coordinate with them the development of the project. Okay. And so basically, this is the investment strategy of the funds, these two different asset classes. As I mentioned, we expect to launch this fund in the coming month, but we will continue fundraising so we can continue diversifying our portfolio. Okay. In terms of the Golden Visa, just to give you a brief information about the program, as you don't know. But basically, the three main options that we have seen in the market are the transfer of 1,500,000 as a capital transfer. This route allows the investor to invest in any financial instrument here in Portugal. It's important to mention that if you opt for this route, you have to maintain the balance of 1,500,000 over the 5 years, over the period that you have the authorization. So this is something that different that from what happens with the venture capital funds. Okay. For the other option is the purchase of real estate properties that is around from 350 or 280 to 500K. And this is something that as of 1st of January, we have seen some limitations because people are not allowed to invest in large city centers as Lisbon and Porto and coastal areas. And finally, the venture capital fund that allows you to invest 500K and then apply for the program. In the last year, this amount was 350K, but from January onwards, they changed the amount to 500K. Okay. In terms of the program, we have several characteristics that are important to highlight. So in order to be eligible for the citizenship or the permanent residency at the end of the period, the investor must hold its investment or its residence authorization for at least 5 years from the date that the visa is granted. And then after this period, one is allowed to apply for the citizenship or permanent residency. During the investment, during this residence authorization, it's mandatory that the applicant comes to Portugal at least 7 days a year, like in general. Of course, there are some conditions, but in general, it's 7 days per year. And it's important to say as well that with the one investment, depending on the conditions of the family, it's allowed to apply not only the first applicant, but also its wife or husband, and also the kids if they are dependent. This is something interesting when compared to other programs. So this is also important to highlight here. But once again, I think here is just a way to give you some information about the program, but we strongly recommend our audience to talk with lawyers and professionals that are taking care of the legal process, so they can assist you and give you more information about the program. Okay, and it's important to say that, of course, that this legal counseling and the government fees are different, are separated from the investment that someone would need to do in the fund or any other route that they may choose. Okay. Here we just show a comparison among the different routes, and one important information that I like to highlight here is that investing through a fund, not only for golden visa investors, but also any other non-resident here in Portugal, the capital gains and income received from the fund are tax exempt. So this is a very interesting advantage when compared to other investment options here in Portugal. So instead of paying in general 28% on capital gains or dividends, you are tax exempt. So you only need to pay taxes in your home country. So this is something very attractive that we believe that will bring more investors to the funds route, instead of acquiring a real estate property directly or even transferring the capital to Portugal. Okay, so this is just to give you some information. As I said, I will share the presentation so you can have more information and see in details about all this information that I'm sharing with you. So finally, what is important to mention here is that Heath Capital is an experienced fund manager. As I mentioned, we have more than almost 20 years of experience in the market. And now we are launching our 4th fund that is also eligible for the Golden Visa program. We have been showing to our investors different reports so they can understand how the funds are being developed, how the capital is being allocated. And of course, for this new fund, it's not going to be different. But of course, I think that before making any investment decision, it's important to talk further about this investment vehicle. So that's why I recommend you to reach out to us so we can talk about it. Okay. And this fund, as I mentioned, it's not just an opportunity for someone willing to apply for the Golden Visa, but also to diversify and start understanding about the Portuguese environment, and not only for real estate, but also to other investment areas that we also develop. And as Rachel asked me in the beginning, apart from these funds that we have focused on the real estate sector, we expect to launch a new fund in the short term that is focused on startups, especially some companies that are on a investment in a life stage of seed and Series A. And for this fund specifically, we are targeting companies that are thinking about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So this is also something very interesting, because we believe that the environment here in Portugal is very interesting to launch new business. And we are seeing a lot of people coming from worldwide. So basically, that's why we also want to enter into this segment of startups. And of course, if you want to know more about this fund, I'm happy to share with you some information on a one-on-one conversation, or send you some information through email as well. Okay. So I think that I gave you some information about Golden Heed and us. Of course, you may have some questions, and I'm here to help you. And thank you very much.